Hey there, Bruce. How you doing?
Yeah. Hey, good morning or good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Hi, good to see you. It's been a while. Good to
Absolutely.
see you. Yeah. Hi, Suba.
I realize I'm a little casual.
Hello, good evening.
Evening. Hey, Kathy. Great. I just saw your message, so I'm so excited that you're here. So
I was just talking away. Yes, I'm glad to be here. Always excited to be with you.
amazing, amazing. We've got Angela here. We've got Yulia here. Beautiful. And we've got Jacqueline. I'm gonna go straight in and welcome everyone. It's amazing seeing you, Yulia, on. And by no means this is an open forum, but I will start with going over some of the tools as I mentioned in the actual blur that I shared with yourselves. Hi there, Paul. How you doing? Good to see you.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, good having you on. Okay, so I'm going to go straight in, and without further ado, we most likely have others joining. Hey there, John. Good to see you.
Hello, Molly.
Yeah, nice to see you on. Okay, so we've got a few companions, recording companions joining, so that's amazing. Okay, so how am I pronouncing that correctly, your name? Okay, I'm gonna attempt to sp pronounce your name. Okay, Yinfu, is that correct? Correct me. We got Dave here. Hi there, Dave. Good to see you. I know it's your first
Hi
time.
there.
Hi there. Gladys, hi, it's you, is it? You've just changed your name? Amazing, amazing. Good to see you on. Okay. So I'm gonna go straight through. Hey there, Tom. I'm gonna start with sharing my slides and then I'll go through a couple of demos. Ideally, what I'd like is for us to share w what you're using because I find when we share what we're using, it helps others in this space too, right? So that's essentially I'm covering a few tools. Some of them will be familiar, and perhaps one or two are new. Gladys, lovely having you. And so by no means one, they're not exhaustive tools. And the other thing is, I would say start, and I'll reiterate this point, start with one to begin with. And if you're feeling confident, we've got a few people who've been in this space for a while and perhaps are experimenting with other tools. So yeah, we'll get them to share as well. So without further ado, I'm going to share my slides. If I miss anything in the chat, please feel free to share in the chat, but I also will ask questions as we go through. And okay, so I'm gonna start with our slides here. Not that one, this one. So let me just make this. Oh, it's the wrong one. Okay, this is the one I'm sharing. Try to make it be large on my screen here. Okay, that should expand. Hopefully you can all see that too. Okay, so welcome. So for those perhaps new here, welcome to the bi-weekly AI session. What we're going to be discussing today is where your context lives. So I've been doing some research behind the scenes, as you can imagine, and we're going to be looking at the Project Workspace across different tools. Some of these, most likely, most of you are using these. Perhaps Claude, you're using GPT. I know most of you have been sharing that you're using GPT. Perplexity, and we're also going to be touching on GitHub. So maybe one or two of these are new. Others you might be thinking, why is she talking about Perplexity here? But I'll go into these in a few moments. Okay, this is really critical as we're looking at projects in this AI space. And you may have other tools perhaps you're using, so we'll come on to those in a few moments. These are the ones I picked out, but by no means, like I said, these are not exhaustive, but they are ones that I've been experimenting with. So just to kind of think about, oops, I've just jumped a little bit. Sorry about that. Why this matters. So the dividing line, the differences, right? So most of you are here. I mean, you're using your AI tools at the moment. You're going to start seeing the difference between kind of what we have in the AI tools that we're using for chat, and how do we differentiate between kind of the chat and then also where does our context live? So if you're, like when we're in our AI tools, perhaps we're starting chats, continuously starting the thread again and again and again and again. So what we're going to be talking about today is to kind of minimize kind of doing that. And some of the things that we're seeing, certainly with some of the frontier models, some of the shifts that are coming about, and I'll share one or two, some things that I discovered actually this week as I was doing this sort of last week, but really got me thinking about, am I using it in a way that's I'm, not exhausting or utilizing all my token because my usage was getting kind of used quite quickly, if you're noticing that. So the difference between AI as a nice to have, like the chat, and a tool isn't the model, it's whether the context survives the conversation. So if you're it's really critical. I don't know if you've noticed that. So I'm sure we'll have some shares. Most people use AI as a sort of just, dictate to it. Hi there, Richard. I know you're in. And maybe you're dictating and you're throwing, and each time you starting again, it's kind of going back to first principles. Projects are how AI starts to behave like your colleague, remembers your client, your style, your last decision. So we're going to be touching on this a little bit today. So quick check, have you built projects in any of these? So we'll check what others are saying. Perhaps you've used Claude Projects. Has anyone used Claude Projects? Have you used Perplexity Spaces? I know one or two of you would have used that. The one that we've spoken about before is Notebook LM. Perhaps you're using Notebook LM, Microsoft Copilot, perhaps notebooks, GPT projects, GitHub Copilot Workspace, Gemini Gems. I'm going to say why what that's different. And then Manus, a lot of these, and which of those have you found helpful? Just kind of a few shares will be helpful, and then we'll go straight in. So I'm just gonna kind of stop for a moment, just ask. Um, are, is anyone completely new to projects here? Is anyone kind of going, I've not used the projects at all? Just a very quick question, just to sort of ascertain where people are. I'm just going to check in the chat. Hi, good to see you. So I'm just checking. Okay, basically, yes to. I've used Claude and ChatGPT projects, been helpful to reuse. Okay, brilliant. We've got Dave using Claude projects extensively. Okay, great. Just a really quick question, John. Were you saying yes, you have ChatGPT projects, use GPT for context, but stop liking it, Claude and Perplexity. Fantastic. So we got some people using Perplexity. Yes, okay, cool. So thank you, John, for clarifying. So a few people have been experimenting. Richard, you've been pretty much converted to Anthropic Claude after the Dow decision by OpenAI. Okay. Bruce is saying I
Yeah.
use Notebook LM a lot, especially with new studio features. Yeah, Notebook LM is amazing. If you haven't sort of gone back to Notebook LM, I know we spoke about it a while back. Gemini connected notebook, but I haven't explored how it works. Okay, Claude seems to be one a lot of people are using. Okay, so yeah, so we've got a lot of people using them and other people perhaps not. And so we tend to go to one we've got familiar with, and then we find one that works better. Perhaps some of you've gone from, I know Richard's gone from one to the other. Here we're seeing that. Okay. So that thank you for sharing which ones you're using. Really helpful. Suba, what did you say? I don't know if I missed yours. Perhaps you shared in there. Perhaps you okay. I'll continue where we okay, I'll continue and then we'll take it from here. So great. We've got a lot of people using projects already. We didn't have anyone mentioning GitHub. Maybe somebody mentioned that.
Myself.
Oh, you did say that? That's the one I missed.
Yeah.
Okay. I said I was
That's
one.
why I'm just looking for someone is using the GitHub Copilot. I've seen in the chat no one is mentioning that. Oh, okay. I just want to mention it because myself I mostly rely on GitHub Copilots.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, right? I was like, hey, we're super here, right? Okay, I was
Yeah.
thinking of you. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so what we'll cover, what a project is, and most of you, it sounds like you are using these definitions that most people get wrong. We'll go into this. Five components every project shares, like whether you're using GPT, like Kathy is, perhaps you're using Claude. They architecturally, they do have similar kind of components within projects. The four tools we'll focus on, the ones we'll look at today, we'll go behind the scenes. And it sounds like people are using Perplexity Spaces, so that's good to know. Um, and how to choose between them, right? How do we choose which one is going to serve us, right? And I'll share kind of how I've been using them, and by no means it's not the only way, but some of the ways that I've been using them. Three traps that bite some of us, right? Regardless of which tool you pick, right? We'll go into this and we'll walk through a couple of examples, right? So some of the things that perhaps have worked, what not worked for ourselves, right? The definition, right? So, how do we define a project? It sounds like such a simple thing, right? When we think of it, like, what is a project? We've been using projects for such a long time, right? We've been, most of us have been working as perhaps even project, kind of in project teams or with others, and we're sharing, perhaps using other tools previously. But in the AI space, it differs, right? Definition, a persistent workspace that bundles three things into one container. I think that's the kind of thing that we want to think about is the container and what does that container contain? It has our custom instructions, it has your files and your conversation history. Those are the three bits of things that we kind of think about when we think of what a project is, regardless of which tool we're using. What it's not, most people think projects means, and I named a chat, right? So it doesn't, right? I've named it, I've looked at a chat, it's become a project. It's not. Project survives between sessions, holds files, and behaves like a workspace, not a thread. So it's like a workspace and not a thread. And when we have a thread, we have conversation threads, of course, but when we have the files, it contains those files in that project. So the three areas in the most kind of updated research, every project tool fits in fits one of the three buckets, if you like, personal productivity containers. So you're working with sources to produce an output, right? So examples could be Claude projects, GPT projects, research notebooks, knowledge hubs, you're studying or building knowledge over time. Examples like we had Bruce mentioning Notebook LM. With Perplexity Spaces, some of us are using a Microsoft Copilot notebooks. Autonomous agents, I know Richard's been using Manus quite extensively. Others, of course, there are many. There's so many at the moment out there. These are just, like I said, a few of those. So please do ask questions as we go through some of the content. Quick distinctions, roles versus projects. So personas are not projects. Gemini gems, okay. So previously in sessions before, we've spoken about having our own GPTs. Some of us have gone away and created our own gems, so they act like GPTs, if you like. They are roles and we give them a persona. So think of it in that way. We give them a role, but it's not a workspace, okay? They have instructions and a few files, but without thread history. Each chat starts fresh. If you need continuity, so that's the thing, they're the wrong primitive place to go, right? So if we want continuation, we want to kind of ensure that we are being selective on the thing we're using. However, gems and GPTs, they do shine and are reusable roles. Think of them as persona you can invoke, not a place to build durable work. So, we've spoken about GPTs. I know some of you've got some outstanding GPTs that are helping you. So great. So we can use those, but don't lump everything custom into the same bucket. So, so rather than kind of saying they're all this, they're not. Sort of just kind of think of them as separate things when we're working in this AI space. So, the five things that every project shares, they have custom instructions. If you're not knowing how to do that, remember you can use your AI to help you write your custom instructions. Seen a massive shift since we started a while back, like 18 months ago. Your standing system prompt, the persistent how to behave layer, the file source, so pin documents the model can reference across each conversation, thread history, saved conversations that persist between sessions, sharing controls, who can view, edit, or run the project. So some of you will be sharing, giving permission rights, that type of thing, and studio output. I know some of you are looking at kind of more studio output, what the project produces, briefings, code, audio, slides, etc. Right? So assets could be a marketable assets that we might have. So litmus test, if a tool only has two or three of the five components, it's a chat with extras. Doesn't mean it's a project workspace. How do we know? Often it needs to have those extras like four or five components. A genuine project space content it compounds over time, and you'll see a difference. So most of us are here using um it sounds like we're using projects apart from one or two, right? Tool, so four of the tools, but like I said, we will go behind the scenes in a little bit. um Tool one, line take, Claude Projects, long form style sensitive work within many sources, right? GPTs, parallel work streams with isolated memory. I'm going to say a little bit more about this as we go through these Perplexity Spaces. Now, you'll see what I've been doing. Be great to hear what you've been doing. When I'm researching, I will look at use Perplexity and then have it researching for me. And then he populates my research into the space. So it does the live research. Remember, Perplexity AI is your research AI. GitHub, the same pattern apply to Code Workspace. Now, I'm just going to check if we've got some questions coming up. Okay, that's Claude. No, automated capturing notes. Okay, thank you, Angie. So we'll go through these in turn. Let's start. I'm going to slow down a little bit because I feel I'm going to take these a little bit slowly. And before we go behind the scenes, I'll go through a couple of revised kind of things that have come up for me. Claude projects. Writing inconsistent voice, code review. So when we're thinking of Claude projects, some of us have been using these. They become, um, for document analysis, it becomes your repo, your kind of place to go. Example, founders monthly investor update pinned, cap table, prior updates, brand voice, one prompt, 5-minute draft. Now, the latest update. This is the bit that I want to share with you because it came up for me a few days ago. When with the updated model with Opus 4.7, we know that's the model that uses more kind of, it's kind of more uses more tokens. So so we want to be mindful how we're using any model really. But what I've noticed recently, I was noticing that my usage even with the extra usage, I'm noticing it was exceeding really quickly. So the key thing to do in a project, if you're not doing this, is to pin Claude.md. So if you haven't started doing that, please start doing that. If you've created a project and you need to go back to your project, ask Claude to help you and ask it to create Claude.md file format. The reason being is it will clean it up. It will only invoke what's needed. It will reduce token usage. And I've noticed a shift in that. So that was the latest update from Anthropic. If you are like me and you're reading some of this or you're updating your knowledge on how these tools are updating because they're moving very quickly, then please just ask your Claude to do that. It will do that in CoWork, so you can, ask it to update your project. If there's work in there, you've got your templates. So just to kind of token budget is shared across files. Even at 1 million tokens or 1 million context window, you're gonna notice, sorry, it will fill it up really quickly. So often we don't have a warning. It just kind of suddenly in the middle of working, you're like, okay, now I've got to like, what's happening here? If you've noticed that, it tends to happen. And so that's why I wanted to just give you a little bit of like what I've noticed behind the scenes, what I'm noticing. Now, I'm talking about, so for us, most of us, if you're using Claude, you'll be on the Pro plan, which is, it's not the Max. Max, I believe it to be, I don't know if anyone's using Max here at the moment, but I can't remember what. Is anyone using Max plan at the moment? I know people use Max.
Claude?
Yeah, using Max, Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the price for that?
Yeah. If it's the plan I'm thinking about, it's the $100 plan because the $20 plan typically only allows you like a 4-hour block to work. And to your point, yeah, Claude Opus has there's some issues with usage of tokens, and I love what you said about creating the markdown file because what I've noticed what Claude also does is it compresses the chat session as you go along in order to expand its basically the session tokens. But in so doing, it's also using up tokens to do that. So, and what I found is really necessary is to create like an export file when I'm in a chat with even in CoWork, because the context isn't unlimited. And because in CoWork you can open a separate chat too, but you need to transition that knowledge base that you mentioned from the prior session and creating a markdown file that basically is a detailed summary of that chat. Because even in spite of Claude supposedly within a container, like a project or a CoWork, supposedly does remember the context from one place to another, it doesn't always do that. So
Yeah,
that's why that markdown file is helpful.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So when I said MD, yeah, Markdown, just kind of, using these acronyms. Yeah, I'm glad you said it's a Markdown. It will create it for you. And then yes, remembering between sessions, right? We kind of say have that share. So I find these absolutely helpful knowing, like I know individuals who work on projects and they will kind of fork out that $100 just as they're working on a particular project and then go back to the cheaper $20 plan, right? Just for those few weeks. I've known people to do that.
Right.
So, but then they come back to the $20, the pro plan. They're like, "Oh, we only got 4 hours."
Right.
So yeah, that's thank you for sharing that. I noticed that too, right? The 4 hour window. I've spread my cost between about five tools, so because I want to share these here. So I tend to kind of go, the 4 hours gone really quickly, and
Yeah.
just
Especially if you're using CoWork and code. Four
yes.
hours go quickly, the tokens go pretty quickly because a lot of times I get and then now that you have Claude Design, which is a fantastic program. I know you've probably showed us that in the past, but it is a token chewer.
Oh my gosh.
But it all rolls up to your main Claude account. You have one Claude account. You have obviously Claude AI, Claude Code, Claude Cowork, and now Claude Design, all basically chewing up the same repository of tokens and session time, all kind of rolled up to one. And they're kind of at this point, they're kind of separate swim lanes. It's what you do in Cowork isn't necessarily transferable to Claude AI,
Yeah.
even if you create a skill. So but Anthropic is moving in a direction where all of these four components will be unified under a single UI, sharing a similar backend. And I think once Anthropic gets to that point, the economies to scale of doing that, I think will really forge Claude ahead in terms of how we use it.
Yeah, and this is it. A lot more people are spending their bucks in that sort of, Anthropic is doing quite well out of all this, right? So we're seeing,
They've, they're worth more than OpenAI at this point,
yeah.
based on the last earnings reports.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I just want to see, you've got a question here from Angie. Hi, feel free to answer this whenever it fits. I'm using GPT for projects. When I do deep research query, it seems to be outside the project. How do I do deep research within a project or place it within a project after the research query is completed? Yeah, it's a great question. Um, that's a great question that you're asking. How does it fit with? So you go away, and this is when we go from doing one thing and then we bring it to the project. How do we do that? I find when I'm doing deep research in this space, I tend to use Perplexity. That seems to be my place. I do the
Yeah,
deep research. You can connect. I haven't done this in GPT, and I've done it in Claude. You can connect Perplexity in in Anthrop, in using it in your interface, if you like. But I haven't done it in GPT. But yeah, I would do the deep research. Remember, some of the tools are great for, like, Perplexity is great for research, right? And so they don't do everything. As we're seeing with all these, like you said, the swim, the lanes, Claude with themselves have different products. If you think about that, right? They've got all these different products, models, if you like, and so they don't do everything, right? And there is this thing, even if you try to design slides in Claude code, for example, it's not to the spec that you might expect in Gamma,
yeah.
right? So we are seeing
Right.
variations. So it's use case scenario. Yeah, so thank you for answering that. But great question. Thank you for asking. It's always yeah, so yeah, that's what I just wanted to share this because I feel Claude projects, and I'll show you kind of behind the scenes in a moment. So GPT projects, I know Kathy said she's been using GPT, and also Angie, running kind of parallel work streams without memory leakage. And it says that it came from my research. I stepped away from projects. I have got projects in GPT, and great to kind of hear how others are finding it. Project memory, and global memory both run simultaneously. This is what the research is saying. You can quietly accumulate cross-project leakage if you don't audit memory settings. That's the thing. You want to double check your memory settings. We have spoken about that. Might be something to look into. So a consultant managing 4 clients, 4 projects, one per client memory stays scooped. Project client A's content doesn't leak into client B's draft. Now, I've not kind of taken it to that level, so yeah, please share. Share projects, and now you can obviously support and have those collaborations with others also. And I believe the collaborations would be at enterprise level. Do share if it's the kind of the higher tier model that's allowing us to do that. Perplexity Spaces acts like a RAG. We got Bruce here, so I know Bruce, you're kind of an expert in this space. Um, and so it kind of does the research, it synthesizes where you want both pinned files, current web context cited together. So market analysis, tracking, landscape pin reports. What I also like, if you haven't done this on Perplexity Computer or in the Perplexity space, you can create dashboards, amazing dashboards, actually. If you haven't done that, it's a really good thing to test out. I'm going to be building one actually in a few days' time, and I'll test that out and I'll share. So now positioned as a knowledge hub for personal or team, second brain, pro plan. You can have 5 contributors per space. Now, what I found is if I'm on any, if I'm in any kind of research or mastermind group, it seems to be a nice space for people to place things in there and share files. I haven't done that here necessarily because I'm experimenting with GitHub now. So I might actually just continue using GitHub so I can share and make it open source. Pro caps, above that, you'll need enterprise kind of tier. The other thing I mentioned previously when we talked about Perplexity Computer, wow, it does amazing things, except that it's a bit like going and using one of those, you're putting in your dime and then you're having to keep topping up because it really uses like you halfway through doing a project and it just uses up a lot of money. So I'd just be mindful of using that. I do really like it. It might be because I'm not on the enterprise level, but yeah. GitHub Copilot started working in this space, been kind of exposed to it for a while now, but haven't really built stuff there myself. But actually, I've launched my GitHub resource bank, so I'll share that with you. And I'll share that link. Apparently wasn't working, so I'll make sure it is working. Watch out for usage based billing, which will kind of start it's in a few weeks' time. Agents from consume AI credits, complex tasks. So we're noticing this now more and more. We're using it, and more we've got used to it. We're wanting output. And there's a whole discussion on what's going to happen with GPU and, data build. We're seeing a lot more of that. It's a different conversation. But anyway, choosing between them, simple lens. So you need to write long form in a consistent voice, use Claude Projects. I'll show you how I've been using them. Run parallel work streams with isolated memory, use GPT projects, research with private files and live website if you like, Perplexity Spaces, and you want to implement code from natural language tasks, you want to use GitHub, and you can make those. The other 4, of course, was one that we heard Bruce mentioning, Notebook LM. Do go back to it again. It's phenomenal what we're able to do in Notebook LM. Gemini Gems. Yeah, they work wonders. If you're not using them, I've highly recommend that you give that a go. And of course we've got Notebook, Microsoft Copilot. Some people obviously still might be using Copilot or Manus, right? 3 traps most teams overlook. Trap 1, regardless of which tool, pin files go stale. So this tends to be the thing, right? So if we notice this, right? All of us are kind of using stuff that we've uploaded that so what that your model will do, it will cite that it behaves. It's been dutiful, right? It's behaving and it will cite that. So just to kind of how do we keep check of the projects that have gone stale, right? Like I did a few days ago, I updated mine with the MD files. So just keep track. One way to do this is you can have version control. You can ask, version 1, version 2. Often the models will do that for you. You may, if you're using, perhaps you're keeping a track of which files they are. Also, when we ask the model to give us a file, it might give us an outdated file. One tip is to remind them of the date that you're on, because they don't always capture that. Sharing leakage, so different sharing modes, different failure modes, so keep track of that. Every tool has a hidden constraint, so there's so remember that's and we're noticing that as we're using them. So there are certain things that we've got to kind of be mindful of. So the problem for Q1 board pack is still pinned in Q3. The model cites it confidently. Bigger context windows make this worse, not better. Capacity doesn't solve governance. Bigger budgets just hide more stale content. So what's the thing? Mitigation, date stamp files, keep track of those, schedule a monthly review of all pin sources, and prefer live links. So MCP, SharePoint, Google Docs, overload snapshots wherever possible. The fix is cultural, whether you're working there's a few of you in your team, but it is an ongoing kind of way of checking, are we updating? And just to review becomes part of a kind of a habit as opposed to leaving it and not doing it. Second sort of sharing leakage might be before sharing a project, list the pin files and ask, would I email all of these to this person? If not, don't share this project. Right. So why this test works is universal. Doesn't matter which tool you're using, the question forces you to question about the files, not just the conversation. What people miss, sharing a project grants access to everything pinned inside, not just the thread. People forget that when they over months, they've shared a lot of information. Habit before any new collaboration is added, 30-second file audit, list what's pinned, decide carefully and consciously, right? Hidden cost, the hidden cost cliffs. Each tool has a constraint that surprises you mid-month. Claude, fill context even at 1 million tokens. Heavy project, hit the ceiling with no warning. I've noticed that on and I joke about it and I go, it's time to go for a walk, right? So maybe it's time to leave. Maybe it's time to leave the
Mm.
desk, right? Get some fresh air. GitHub Copilot, all credits post June 26. Complex agents run burn faster. Be mindful if you're using Copilot, you'll notice that your monies won't get that far. Manus and predictable credit burn tasks vary widely in cost as well. Microsoft Copilot notebooks, $30, per a seat per month adds up very quickly, and it really does sort of add up. Enterprise needed for organizational scale, and this is where what I'm not using still. I'm on the pro plan, and I top up if I'm doing a project. Pilot a full scale of 30 days before standardizing organizational wide. Don't pick a tool from a 10-minute demo. Catch the cliff before it hits, everyone gets hit by it. So I'm going to go behind the tools before we've got any. Great seeing you, Ivan. Great having you on. All right, so I'll give you a couple of examples. Some of you might be using these. If I've missed any questions, and also please feel free to unmute if you have a question and ask the question. If you have anything that I've missed in the chat, that sometimes they might go missed. Oh, Richard, you have your question hand raised?
Yeah, I just had a quick point. It's great that you mentioned that it's better to actually connect to like a Google Drive or document source. I know with projects, I've made the mistake of throwing everything but the kitchen sink into like a Claude project. The problem with that is the more you put in there, the more it will expend tokens and context to try to assimilate all those project documents. And it spreads the context so thin that it tends to start forgetting the important things. So when you're doing a Claude project, be mindful that only put what's necessary into the project files. And if you do need to add more, be very specific about which project files it should access when you prompt it inside a project. Because otherwise, if it opens up and just reads through everything that you've put in the project documents, then it gets diluted and distorted, similar to a large language model, which has just a morass of information when you prompt it that comes back. So I've made that mistake. It also chews up tokens much faster.
Absolutely. And coming back to your point, Richard, and when we go back into our projects and we go back into the settings, go back and ask it to do that MD check. What I'll do is I'll share a file. I'll do this via email, the latest opus file doc worth going through. Let me see if I have it. Let me see if I have it. I'll share it via email. That's okay. It's a fairly lengthy document, but it asks you to go through those instructions that you put in the project. So I've noticed a difference in that. It's a good point, Richard. Suba.
Yeah. As the Richard mentioned, the main point, the Claude Code forgot the main things once after the 5 hours or 4 hours of window. So, is there anyone? I'm just a curious question. Like, is anyone tried with the Olama? Olama, it is the local desktop version, but we can be used as an unlimited version of tokens. Just want to test it about it. I haven't tried it, but I have to be to try it in my local desktop, and as well as later to integrate with the cloud as well. So it is an open source model, so we can take integrate with any kind of open source model with the cloud code, and as well we can try it end up with unlimited tokens.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Suba. Because what comes to mind as you're sharing with any of these models, remember whether we like it or not, they are still being trained on how we are using these models. So having a local LLM, great. I mean, fantastic, Suba. It's great work. Yeah. It's
Yeah, if anyone has either Richard or anyone has tried about or tested it, just let me know. Then I want to try some projects in that, and how this work with complex code rather than the basic things. Want to build some project and let you know then.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, and yeah, let us know how you're getting on. I will definitely put a message out and ask people about kind of whether using Aloma.
Yeah, because I'm not sure about the trust because so many open source models are there. I have to try it out with the trustworthy thing to make sure the code won't be
Exposed.
exposed. Exactly.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? So we're all sort of testing things out, wanting to be careful. Absolutely. If it's on your device, um, yeah, so I'll check this out for you. Not a problem, Suba.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so let's have a quick look. So if we go into Claude, so when you're creating projects, just go into, of course, you go into projects. So I was doing these. I actually the reason you're seeing this is because I've updated and applied those changes based on the information for the MD file. So what I went and did was I got it to kind of check the skills, the list of things I've got in my project. And then I've asked it to kind of go through it and make it this file. And actually, like I said, you don't have to do this yourself. You've obviously got your own, whatever your project contains, but to clean it up so that it actually you want to use it so it's supporting you as opposed to making it kind of more of a task for you, right? So that's kind of what it came back with my kind of orchestrator for Leadrise, the skills architecture. I've got all these numerous skills and I'm trying to keep on track with the skills. So I've created those projects. So those are just simple examples. Like I said, I updated these the other day, as you can see. I've got kind of things that I have. I'm sure many of you, Paul, you said you've been using projects. You'll have a lot of these already. So I've been testing numerous ones across, and I've created my own council, etc. here. So it's just an example. I'm not going to spend time going through creating a project necessarily here, but I just wanted to give us a feel for kind of what we can do creating that. Ivan, I think you may have joined just as we were starting. Are you using which projects? Are you using Claude projects? Are you using GPT projects?
I'm in GPT at the moment. I haven't got the kahunas to move across just yet.
Into Claude?
Yeah. But it's just projects. I mean, I do have a question though.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible to transfer your projects across from GPT to Claude?
I know you can export your chats across, whether you can
Yeah.
put your projects. Richard, do you know that? We can check.
Yeah, no, I don't know the answer to that. But yes, you can definitely export. What you can do is go into a project in ChatGPT and ask it to create a distillation of all of the knowledge base in that project in ChatGPT,
Oh, that's a
and then
good
export
idea.
that and import that into Claude and just create a Claude project. The other thing is obviously you can import into the Claude project the same files that you had in the
Mhm.
ChatGPT project. But yeah, I think that might be the best way. I'm assuming that ChatGPT can do that because obviously it's got persistent memory and throughout a project
Mm.
amongst the different chats. So yeah, that might work.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
A
I'll
great
give it a
point.
go.
That's a great point, especially if you're in one tool and you're noticing you want to use Claude or you want to use a different tool. I always say it's not so much the tool itself, it's knowing how we can use any AI tool, right?
Yeah,
Because that's the power in using AI.
exactly.
It's that's
Mm.
the foundation because, we might use one because, you're coding or you're wanting the longer context window. So that would be that would be the thing, right? Because we get caught up in one model, if you like, and then we stick
Yeah,
to that model. And we just want to be making sure that, we can pivot, whatever happens to any of these, like when Facebook, we won't go into those discussions, but we've seen things where people have just or their accounts were closed, right? I've seen examples of that. They're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, where does it all?
yeah,
So keep track and keep record of your files, what you're creating, and clean them
yeah.
up, right? I would say just use,
That's
yeah, Richard.
And that's why, to your earlier point, it's good to have all of your critical documents, like your if you're in business, your customer avatar, your what we call Rosetta Stone, which is your style guide, your writing samples, your values, your beliefs, all that kind of information in a Google Drive, and then use the connector capabilities that Gemini, Claude, OpenAI, all Copilot, all of them have to connect to the same body of work so that you have consistency throughout. And most of the LLMs now, you can import or export your custom instructions from like ChatGPT into Gemini, into Claude, into Copilot, as well as most of them now have memory, which you can kind of standardize as well. So, because to your point, most of us made the switch from OpenAI to Anthropic last August when ChatGPT 5 came along. And it was arduous and a royal pain in the neck. So the cautionary lesson that we learned is in this AI world, you have to be nimble. You have to be ready to switch among the products because things change so fast. But you also want to standardize across the products so that ChatGPT doesn't have one version of you, that Claude has another, and Gemini has another, and so forth, because multimodal use is definitely something that comes into play, as you've explained. There's no one LLM that is, head and shoulders above the others. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a
Mm.
reality that you're probably going to want to use, even
Yeah,
if you are an Anthropic user. You'll use ChatGPT for certain things, and I still do that, as well as Gemini.
absolutely. And then as you're saying and you're working on like been building skills, right? Or I then have it in my Google Drive. I will look at that and then it's populated there, right? I've got record of what's been populated in my Google Drive. It doesn't have to be Google Drive. It could be, you could connect it to Dropbox,
Mm.
so that's
Yeah.
one way to do it. Suba has a question. Suba.
Yeah, yeah. Just continue the conversation further. Just question is, when we transfer the project context from the GPT to Claude or any other different kinds of models means, so is there any size limitations during the upload between the different kinds of models?
So when you're exporting, so when you're
Yeah, exporting.
exporting it over, um, I've not noticed that to be an issue on Claude personally, but I don't know if anyone else has noticed that. I've been able to take quite a lot of things across.
Yeah.
Books, for example, I've been able to do that with. Um, so has anyone seen any restrictions their end?
It's definitely increased. I mean, if you go into Claude now, you can throw, gigabytes of stuff up there because they've expanded their
Okay.
ability to store documents. But yeah, 2 years ago it was very limited. And some of them have, like, I know a ChatGPT project, I think, still has a limit to 20 documents that you can upload.
Mm.
Um, but they're moving it's a mixed blessing because yeah, you can now upload many more documents in more space. But again, as I said earlier, when you start throwing everything in the kitchen sink in there, then you put more and more strain on the LLM, to really process and create the context you want. That the pool gets deeper and the waters get muddier.
Mm.
So it's a mixed blessing.
Right. And just double check. I've got in fact I could check that as well. You can still access, I'm assuming, your documents in projects, whereas when you upload your knowledge on GPT, you don't necessarily have that document. You can't see the
Yeah.
document you've uploaded. See, that was the
Yeah.
thing that made it a little bit like, oh, what version is it? And then that's where you want to have that version control, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so and then we've got Perplexity for those. If you're not using Comet, I would comment it is, you're going to see it now. And I'll share my screen, so you can see. Um, so if I go in fact, let's have a look. So if I go into here, I'm accessing this through my AI search comment. I don't know if anyone can see at the top there. You might be able to see it. Um, has been yeah, we spoke about Comet some months back now, and I've continued to use it. So if you haven't, so I've got the Pro plan. And others might have the enterprise one. Like I said, it does get used up really quickly. But if you go into spaces, you can create new spaces here. You can see what spaces there are. They should be showing up. And I use it just for but I use it for research, right? So you can see kind of some of perhaps the instructions aren't showing on there, but it's ongoing research for lead rise, right? So I want to see what's so I've put a kind of, set an alert or an alarm, right? So to do some research, then it goes away and does that. So it's normally the stuff that we talk about here that I
Hmm.
get it researched, that it has a list of things. If I want to check in and do that, I can create reports based on that if I need it to. But that seems to be a very simple way. In my AI mastermind program that I've been on, we have all our sources, well, not say all, because some of them are in Notion too, but we have some of these sources added in that space, which is great because we can go back and some of the transcripts and are in there. It might be something for us to think about here, but maybe I know some of you are using Spaces, and Yulia said you're using Space. It'll be good to hear how people are using it. Oh, okay, Angie, no worries. I know Angie says she has to leave. No worries. The other one, so are there questions around Perplexity Spaces? I know one or two of you using, Yulia, you're using it, right?
No, I haven't tried the spaces. I just use it in a project, uh, Perplexity project, to keep all the writing and research and all that. But I've seen it. I just didn't dive into it.
Okay. So it's more kind of in that, yeah, spaces. I use space in this, but yeah, so you could obviously create projects. And like a lot of the stuff, as I mentioned, you can create projects in other tools too, right? As we mentioned. The other last one is I started doing this a few days ago. Let's see if I can get my um, um, document up here. So, and I know that for, say, for Richard, for example, perhaps you're using much more of this for sure when I'm thinking of sharing projects here. You could put the resources here, for example, but this
Mm,
to me felt like a really nice way of sharing projects, right? So if you were sharing a link to your projects, and there's a learning curve, certainly, for sure, right? So if you've got a project, I created a project, I have no idea where my project's gone now, so that's a sign, right? Link to your project. Oh, yes, there it is. So if I want to submit that and then it shows up my project, that's what I had to do, right? And that project is showing kind of a strategy of what I'm working on. Richard, you're probably using
mm.
GitHub much more than I am. I know a lot of our resources, certainly the code we're using on the
So,
mastermind gets shared.
yeah,
But I find this quite
I,
enjoying it.
yeah, no, this is great. I'd love to explore using this more. What I started doing is since I have Claude's plugins to my browser for Claude in general and also Gemini, I can code in Claude Cowork or Claude Code, and it uses the connection through the browser connection to actually do the coding directly in GitHub and pushes it directly from GitHub or through Vercel, depending on what we use. So that completely eliminated the middleman. I was using Cursor and I was using Anthropic to write the prompts for Cursor, using Anthropic to review the plan back from Cursor, to review the report from Cursor after it finished the coding. But then I began to see there was a disconnect at times between Claude and Cursor. So I just cut out the middleman. And now I code directly in Claude Coworker code into GitHub directly through using the connection. And it's worked really well, although I have to remember to disconnect everything because you don't want to have all of these browser extensions and actively accessing your websites and go away somewhere because there are nefarious agents that are starting to embed or interfere into your browser now, and that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. So be very careful when using the Gemini and the Claude uh, uh, plugins to Google Chrome. Make sure you, when you're done, disconnect whatever it was connecting to, and just be very mindful of that. But it works well.
Yeah, so thinking about connectors, so when I'm just getting those up, that's a great thank you for sharing that. So when you've got your connectors, it's um like so I'll just show you for some of you might be new, and I'm also mindful of time, but I have got other points I want to cover. So if we're going in and so that's why I think having these sessions really help, because people are thinking, well, how do I go into connecting? So the ones I've connected are the ones here. And so sometimes if they're not working, then you've got to go through, are you allowing them or not allowing them? So that's a sort of a check. This is another research. It's not connected at the moment, but it's another research, Tavili. I don't know if others have come across that one, but if you're doing that, so Notion, it writes articles, which is super helpful, which I've connected it to. It's got the branding assets. I draw on the skills and then it writes the article. Something to think about. Perhaps some of you are using or writing articles, sharing the message. It's worth looking into to doing that. So we've got a few more minutes. I'm just gonna finish off with a wrapping up for today. And I've got a couple of pointers. Let me just see, share. I'm kind of hovering on my um, just wrapping up. So time to take a deep breath. There's a lot of tools out there, lots of patterns and lots of possibilities. So in the last sort of hour, I've gone through a few of those questions you had, and thank you for those who've been sharing. And what have been some of the surprises? Some people kind of think it's maybe GitHub for others. It's Claude at the moment, the pattern recognition click. Sometimes something shifts. It's sometimes worth paying attention to what is it that we're using, and the use case scenario. I always say, what is it that we're going to be using it for, right? So, what's the thing that we can leverage and use? So, one thing to try this week, don't pick all four. Some of you definitely are far much further ahead. One project, so build one project around something you do regularly, client, course, deal, piece of writing, pick one from the ones we listed. I wouldn't necessarily go with GitHub as one to begin with. It's a learning curve for sure. Pick the ones either from, I would say, Claude, GPT, Perplexity, Claude GPT perhaps, and then expand into Perplexity. If you want to go with Perplexity, yeah, definitely. And have the browse, Comet browse, AI browser. If you, I can share that in our follow-up notes. Pin 3 files, set custom instructions, use your AI to help with custom instructions. Think about MD files, run it for a week. Let the tool work alongside a flow for a few days, and just see how it shows up for you, and notice some of the changes, and pay attention to where friction is eventually does disappear. So projects, turn AI from typewriter to persistent workplace. We talked about 4 tools. Think about some of those traps, and pilot project. Look at one project that you're committed to. You want to go deeper? Anyone interested? I'd say please reach out. Even if it means that you're not building a skill. Projects organize your context, instructions, files, threads in one dedicated space, workspace. Skill is reusable name capability that turns Claude into a specialist for one specific workflow across all your projects. So think of that across all your projects. That's where you'll be compounding. So simply DM me for that your first skill build running session, so we can work on that together. Um, we know some of the examples we've spoken about, a library design for your workplace and frameworks. So yeah, just simply book a 30-minute call. We'll jump on and we'll work on that together. I know I've gone over a minute. I hope you found today helpful and useful. We've got a few people kind of sharing in here. I just want to say thank you everyone for coming. And also do kind of reach out, connect with me. Thanks, Kathy. Great having you on. And let us know which ones you're using. Perhaps share on LinkedIn. Let us know which one you're using. And yeah, you're more than welcome. And it's lovely seeing you here. Thanks, John. Great being on. And please reach out to me with questions. Love to hear those questions you may have, because this is where we learn, right? We come together, we're in this space, things are moving very quickly. And the more we do this, the more we can learn from one another. Thank you, everyone. I want to say have a great rest of your day. You're welcome. Speak to you soon. Ciao from me.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, take care. Bye. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye now. Take care.
Bye. Thanks, Bernie. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.